So the Vancouver Canucks did not even draft until 93rd overall this year, so it's a little difficult to be critical of their draft class, but let's take a look at what they ended up with anyway. At 93, they drafted Melvin Fernstrom, and I watched Fernstrom quite a bit this year, and I just never was really taken with his game, but he does have some interesting tools and real highlight reel moments that stuck out to me over the course of the season, but they just didn't happen all that often. I think he's a pretty smart player. He brings a nice, heavy physical game and a very well-rounded toolkit, but I don't really know how much of his production at the junior level is going to translate beyond here. I could see a bottom six player in the future here with Fernstrom, but I do think that things really need to improve from here if he's going to keep up with NHL pace. He's highly productive, but I don't know how much offense he'll generate at higher levels when things get ramped up a little bit, but I don't think he also looked out of place playing in the SHL minutes that I caught this year. So interesting pick at 93. Not a huge amount of upside to me, but a decent floor you can work with. At 125th, they drafted Riley Patterson of the Barrie Colts, and Patterson was a bit of a blind spot to me, I'll admit. I saw him here and there over the course of the year and just wasn't really blown away with what I saw. But similar to Fernstrom, he just brings a lot of everything at a decent level. He's got some physicality to his game, but not a whole lot to really write home about. He's got a decent shot, he can make plays, he's an okay skater. He's just a bit of a blank slate to me, and I don't really know what he's gonna be, but at 120th overall, if you think you've got something there, then by all means take your chance on him. And I don't mind him, it's just a matter of what you think you're going to get out of him. At 162nd, Vancouver drafted Anthony Romani, one of the most productive re-entry players in the CHL this year. Now, I watched Romani a few times this year, and he has some skill, he's got a pretty good wrist shot, and I think he just had all the offensive tools necessary to score a lot in the OHL, but I don't know if it projects to the next levels really, really well. That doesn't mean it's impossible. Drafting a player who was this good in the OHL this season, who is pretty young for a re-entry, it's a decent bet in this range. I just didn't see anything with him that really screamed, this guy should have been drafted last year and he's probably going to the NHL. He's a decent offensive player. I think his pace of his game is a little bit low to project as an offensive player in the NHL. He's a bit of a boomer bust for me, but I do think that this was a decent bet to take, especially considering you didn't have a draft pick in the first two rounds. At 189th, the Vancouver Canucks drafted Parker Alkos. I was pleasantly surprised to see Alkos drafted. He was on my list here and there over the course of the year. I just think that he's a player that is a bit of a long shot, but a good developmental case. He's very tall, he could use some physical development, he's very young for the draft class, I think he moves the puck decently well. It's just a matter of molding him into something that I could see working in the NHL. I think the tools are there, but it's going to take time. At 221st overall, the Vancouver Canucks really surprised me in a good way, drafting Basil Sonsonens. You can look at his Elite Prospects profile and see that he had like 0 points in 180 games this year, but I think that he brings a little bit something different to the game that, again, you leave him in Switzerland for a few years at a good developmental league, I think he could turn into a decent defensive defenseman. He's very tall, very lanky, but brings a decent amount of skill. He's very young for the draft class, and I do think that there might be something here if he fills out physically. He's a decent skater, he's good positionally. I tracked a couple of games of him at this point because I was curious about what I was seeing, and I thought he played pretty well at the U18s. Granted, I thought Daniil Ustinkov, who went completely undrafted, is a bit of a better project, but Sansonens is bigger, and there might be some physical development that really elevates his game. I just wouldn't expect a whole lot of offense out of him down the road. So the Vancouver Canucks, to me, get a 3A, and yeah, okay, Canucks fans, that might sound bad, but it's actually pretty good. I think that there's a few players here that might be able to chip in the NHL in some way, and I can't look at any of the players they drafted and go, what were they thinking on this? Every single player brings something intriguing in some way that I think could be useful in the NHL at some point if things go well. And that's very rare for me in the NHL draft, and considering they didn't have a pick until 93, picking a few guys that might be able to play some games here and there, I think they did pretty well, even though they might have ended up without some huge high upside option that has a lot of certainty. I think the Canucks did decently well this year. So with that, we're done with the Vancouver Canucks. If you liked it, be sure to check our description box for a Fanatics affiliate link, where anything you buy in the store from there will give us a small kickback, or you could subscribe at Scouching.ca, where a subscription gets you access to a private Discord server, as well as data tables for drafted, undrafted prospects, and plenty of other things that you can check out on that site. So with that, we move on to the St. Louis Blues.